If the operation was targeted almost exclusively at Hezbollah operatives and it was surgical, I think every state has a right when it's being attacked to launch an attack back at the operatives that are attacking them. That's a very easy answer for me. And I take, by the way, Jonathan, great exception to you painting me as some like broad defender of Middle Eastern, you said the Palestinian people. I just defend innocent life. And so whether it's October 7th and Israeli children being killed and Israeli children being taken away, I used my platform to say how wrong it was when people were pulling down the signs. And I'm also feeling just as strongly about the Palestinian women and children. And I don't like when people try to conflate humanity.
Yeah, so first of all, there's a correct path here. Take the ceasefire, stop the occupation, two states, and let both Israel and the Palestinians live in peace and freedom.
None of this is related to Hezbollah. Sorry to interrupt, but none of this is related to Hezbollah.
It's 100% related to Hezbollah.
No, it isn't. Hezbollah, this Iranian proxy has nothing to do with Palestinians. Hezbollah has nothing to do with Palestinians. They are Lebanese. They are Shiite Lebanese. They have nothing to do with Palestinians.
Do you actually genuinely believe that Hezbollah is attacking Israel for no reason at all, just because they don't like Jews? No, they're attacking you because of the occupation. Are you so incredibly ignorant that you don't understand that simple concept?
The only ignorant person here is you, my esteemed colleague to the panel, to be parroting Iranian talking points.
But the bottom line is Israel is starting a much larger regional war, and
Israel is starting on the 7th of October.
I guarantee you that Jonathan is going to come on here. You're not going to talk over me. I guarantee you Jonathan comes on here and says, America must pay for it. America must die for Israel. That's what he's going to say.
You can scream until tomorrow. You don't impress me even a millimeter.
In this one, we're going to have a look at a debate between Candace Owens, Cenk Uygur, and a former IDF spokesman, Jonathan Conricus. And surprisingly, all three individuals make some good points to support their arguments, but I always take Cenk Uygur's opinion with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to the conflict in Israel, because in my opinion, he is obviously anti-Israel. And before we get started, I want to address an issue that came up the last time I had Candace on my channel, which ended up costing me some subscribers. Look, this channel is America first, and if I'm willing to have people on the likes of Cenk Uygur, Destiny, David Pac-Man, I'm certainly going to have on Candace Owens, a woman who has sacrificed more than all three of those men put together over her beliefs in Christ and putting America and Americans first. Now, with that out of the way, I have to say that this debate does not fail to entertain, and I know that because of the previews, as I will be reacting live and watching this for the first time along with you guys. So let's go ahead and just get her started.
Let me bring Candace Owens in now. And we got Cenk back, I think. I'm sorry about that, Cenk. I don't know what happened. I think you disappeared and sparked a whole new conspiracy theory that we had you zapped off camera, but that is not true. You're alive and well and back with us. Candace, your reaction to this extraordinary operation, seemingly led by Mossad, ordered by Netanyahu yesterday, ongoing today, right across Lebanon. Two children are reported to have been killed in this operation, who were clearly civilians and not Hezbollah terrorists. That's reported by the Lebanese Health Authority, which is not Hezbollah. What is your response to this? Is it, as Jonathan just said, fair game if primarily the people who were targeted, almost all of them appear to have been Hezbollah?
Well, I think a question that I immediately want to ask him, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to, is that if you're able to delineate how surgical and precise these operations can be with the intelligence that you have, why are there 40,000 dead innocent women and children and civilians in Gaza? Because that's a question that I've always had. We keep hearing the excuse that behind every one of these victims is a Hamas soldier, but there's not 40,000 dead Hamas soldiers. And if the excuse is that there's a tunnel under there, I mean, just me thinking logically through engineering, you would only have to hit a tunnel at a couple of points to render it ineffective. So I'm just interested in why you guys can perform surgical procedures, but seemingly not in Gaza, where it looks like just an absolute war zone and buildings and hospitals and children and women are dead.
Well, on that point, let's get a response from Jonathan. It's a fair question.
It's a very fair question, and I appreciate it. And I'd like to make a comparison. I'm sure that you follow events, and you're very interested in what happens in Israel and with what our enemies are doing, and I see that. But I'm sure that you know that until this cyber operation that Israel reportedly did, Israel was able to kill more than 500 Hezbollah operatives in Lebanon, throughout Lebanon. Now, I haven't seen you tweet about it or any of the other people who usually support the other side. But if you take a look at how many civilians were killed in Lebanon as a result, as an unfortunate byproduct of Israeli strikes, and if you compare that to the situation in Gaza, I think that what you will find is it's the same IDF, the same operating procedures that we have in Gaza, only that here in Lebanon, until now, the situation is that Hezbollah has so far distinguished itself from civilian population, and they haven't been fighting from within cities. And as such, when the IDF has deployed lethal weapons against them, then terrorists have been killed and not civilians. And it's not because it's a different IDF, it's because, as you said, you used the word excuses, I would call it a reason and the sad reality of Hamas using Gazan population as their human shields, which I think is deplorable. And if you claim to be a defender of Palestinians and Arabs and other people, and you have that in your heart, then I think that your criticism should be pointed first and foremost towards Hamas and all of the other cowards who are using Palestinians as their human shields, who are afraid to fight out in the open, who are firing rockets from schools and who are using mosques as their launch pads against Israel. That, I think, is despicable, and that should be condemned. Not the fact that we are going in there to fight them after they attacked us on October the 7th.
I didn't issue a condemnation. I didn't issue a condemnation. I asked you a question, and you just delivered me the same talking points that we always hear, and you didn't actually provide me an answer.
I actually
did.
If you
are able to go into a foreign country, you guys you have control over the Gaza Strip, right? It's a part of Israel.
No, it isn't.
If you are able to go into a country like Lebanon where you don't have control, where you can't just shut off their water, where you can't be monitoring people's actions in the same way, within the same proximity to Israel, why are you unable to similarly perform a surgical operation to locate where exactly those Hamas soldiers are? And by the way, do you have a number for how many Hamas soldiers have been killed in the Gaza Strip?
Right. So, I mean, you either weren't listening or maybe I wasn't
how
clear.
many Hamas soldiers have been killed?
Yeah, I heard your question,
Strip?
Candace. I heard your question. Maybe you weren't listening or I wasn't clear. I'm usually clear when I speak, but I'll repeat it. Israel has been able to take out more than 500 Hezbollah operatives, and with absolutely minimal collateral damage in Lebanon. Why is that the case, which is different from the situation in Gaza? Because Hezbollah hasn't been hiding amongst civilians yet. Hamas is, and that is why, unfortunately, Palestinian civilians in Gaza have also been killed in significant numbers, and many have been wounded. If I were you, I wouldn't use Hamas information. I wouldn't rely on Hamas statistics and to claim for them to be true.
I'm asking you, I'm not asking Hamas. How many Hamas soldiers have been killed in the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, I'll answer, and it's nice that we're having an interview and Pierce is getting a few minutes off. According to the information that I have, and this is working numbers, I don't think that there are final numbers, and I think it will take a lot of time before a definite number of dead Hamas terrorists is given. But the best assessment that I am aware of is between 16 and 18,000 Hamas operatives that have been killed in combat in Gaza.
Oh, let's bring in Cenk. Why are you laughing?
Because that's an outrageous, ludicrous number. Even the IDF doesn't make up numbers like that. Once they said 13,000, then they went back to 9,000. And this gentleman right here just made up 16 to 18,000. So Jonathan, do you concede that Israel has dictatorial control over Gaza and the West Bank? That it's a different situation than a sovereign nation that could have military or different barracks or can separate folks? It's like saying in occupied France, well, why was the resistance hiding among the civilian population? So of course we had to kill all the French who were protecting the resistance. So the problem is that another country, Israel, has dictatorial control over Gaza and West Bank. I mean, you've got to acknowledge that, right? I mean, you're not claiming that Gaza is free. You guys just destroyed 85%
I think that the only thing ridiculous...
If I may say that, I think we're focusing too much on the Israel-Hamas war, which we've done a lot on this show, as you know, with you guys, right?
If you enjoy content like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.
Right? I would rather, Cenk, just get your reaction to a specific operation which appears to have been conducted Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel's instructions, and carried out, primarily led by Mossad. From an operational point of view, obviously a stunning success. But is it valid? Is it fair game, as Jonathan said, given the way that Hezbollah has been attacking Israel now for years?
Yeah, so the most important part of this, Piers, is why did Israel act now? Because, look, you could say, oh, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, so we should have gone into Iraq. No, I don't think so. You could say Hezbollah are terrorists, but then Israel has killed 30 times the civilians that Hamas has, let alone Hezbollah. So is the Israeli government, the IDF, and Netanyahu terrorists?
But you don't dispute that Hezbollah has been targeting Israel for years.
Okay. Yeah, and Israel's been targeting Israel bombed Beirut, bombed Damascus.
No, forget Israel for a moment.
They bombed Tehran. They bomb all their neighbors.
Yeah,
but hold on. Why now, Piers?
Specifically, do you accept that Hezbollah has persistently targeted Israel with endless rockets? Do you accept that?
Oh, they've launched rockets, no question. And I'm sure you guys can see that Israel has dictatorial control over Gaza and the West Bank.
But don't go back to that. So is it fair game, as Jonathan said, if it was Hezbollah terrorists who were specifically targeted through their pages, is that fair game, given the state of the warfare between Hezbollah and Israel?
Look, I can answer that question, but we've got to get to the more important question.
Well, answer that question first.
Hold on, I'll answer it. So did they check that the 2,800 people and the children near them and the other civilians near them, that they were all, quote-unquote, terrorists before they decided to murder all of them? Now, luckily, only 12 died, but 2,800 were injured. No, they didn't check. And by the way, buyer beware of Israeli products. Apparently, they have bombs in them. Okay,
do you suggest we send them a warning?
Is why
you remind me of when the BBC asked me if we should have warned the Hamas terrorists who were keeping our 4 hostages before we went in to save them. Why didn't we warn them before? Because civilians were killed in the combat. You are just as ridiculous in your pontification and in your acrobatics to try to smear Israel. You're really unable to say black is black and white is white. And look how low Piers has to go in order to get you to say something against Hezbollah. How low does he have to go in order to justify Israel defending itself?
No, Jonathan, it's easy. It's easy. I call out Hamas and Hezbollah all the time. I wish they would never fire any rockets. I wish there would be no violence.
Right.
You, on the other hand, are totally
okay with
killing
the
30 times the number. Hold on, let me finish. You're okay with killing 30 times the number of civilians that Hamas did. Obviously, that's terrorism on a mass scale that Israel does.
No, it isn't. No,
but you say it's okay because we're the good guys? No, that makes you terrorists.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
You didn't want to kill them.
No matter how many times you repeat the lie, it doesn't turn it to be true. Israel is defending itself against a jihadi enemy, an enemy that has said we are not going to stop until we kill all the Jews. I wouldn't want you or anybody else to be in that situation, but that is the situation that Israel is in. We have to defend ourselves against people who say our only goal in life is to eradicate Israel and kill all the Jews who live there and build a Sharia-based state in Palestine. Those are their words. I don't know how you think that you could defend yourself against it, but being nice isn't one of them.
You live in La La Land, where you say the Palestinians might prevent an Israeli state. Well, Israel exists, but you prevent a Palestinian state, take away all their freedom, you take away all their rights, you kill them wantonly anytime you want, you destroy all of Gaza, and you pretend not to be the terrorist? So let me ask you something. Is the IDF the most incompetent military in the history of the world, that they just accidentally killed over 30,000 civilians, including over 25,000 women and children in Gaza? Are they buffoons who just cannot ever get the right target? Oh, we got a couple of Hamas guys. Oops, we killed a stadium full of women and children.
Listen,
and you're pretending not to be a terrorist?
Is someone who would be sitting here and doing the apologetics of Hamas. And I say that with a little respect. For you to be saying that without having lived in Israel, without having dealt with terrorists that are going after our families and women and children, without even understanding what Hamas is, You compare Hamas to French resistance fighters? Seriously? You compare Hamas, a jihadi terrorist genocidal organization that says, yeah, well, it's a stupid analogy. It's reckless, and you're whitewashing Hamas by even thinking that you can compare French resistance against Nazi Germany to Hamas terrorists that are willing to burn and butcher and rape and kill Israeli civilians.
I'm not talking about the Hamas terrorists. I'm talking about the civilians you've butchered.
I'm talking about butchering anybody.
I want to bring in Candace here.
A stadium full of dead women and children, and you say that their lives don't count, right? Their lives don't count. Have you ever lived in Gaza?
No, I've never lived in Gaza.
I want to jump in real quick right there and acknowledge that point that Jonathan Conricus just made, in that Hamas pulls no punches. They do whatever they want to the women and the children and the innocent civilians, and Cenk trying to act like Israel should have some type of quorum when it comes to the same thing in their retaliation / defense of their own country in this war. It's curious. And as America First TV, look, I'm obviously America First, and I wish that 0 of my tax dollars was contributing to that war over there. I have the understanding that it's been going on since the dawn of time. And to Jonathan Conricus' point where he asked the question, what are we supposed to do, send them a warning? It's actually my understanding, and this might have changed, but Israel does actually give a brief amount of warning to the areas that they're going to attack, which kind of helps Hamas, but it also gives the civilians more of a chance to evacuate those areas if they're allowed to. You know what I mean? Because from what I understand, Hamas has the majority of the control over there in Gaza. So let's continue with Candace.
I want to bring in Candace to ask the same question I asked Cenk, which he hasn't really answered in a clear, simple manner, which I think is a very easy question to answer. Hezbollah are wedded to constantly attacking Israel. They are an enemy of Israel, as Hamas are. So is it, as Jonathan said, fair game for Israel to have conducted this operation, which appears to have been almost, and I use that phrase very advisedly, almost exclusively against Hezbollah terrorists?
If the operation was targeted almost exclusively at Hezbollah operatives and it was surgical, I think every state has a right when it's being attacked to launch an attack back at the operatives that are attacking them. That's a very easy answer for me. And I take, by the way, Jonathan, great exception to you painting me as some like broad defender of Middle Eastern, you said the Palestinian people. I just defend innocent life. And so whether it's October 7th and Israeli children being killed and Israeli children being taken away, I used my platform to say how wrong it was and people were pulling down the signs. And I'm also feeling just as strongly about the Palestinian women and children. And I don't like when people try to conflate humanity as some political position that's against the Jews or against the Palestinians. At the end of the day, the preservation of life is what needs to come first. And I don't feel, if you did this in Lebanon, great, I'm happy for that. I don't think that has been your priority in Gaza. And I use my platform to say how wrong I think what's happening is there. But that's not a condemnation against Jews or the Jewish people. It's a condemnation against Netanyahu's government, which I think has become somewhat radicalized. And I think that's a fair critique, given the fact that you have so many Israelis that are taking to the street protesting him, as well as the families of the people who are hostages who have been protesting him and speaking out, as well as some of the most prominent Jews in America, like Ari Emanuel, who is a Zionist, who has said that he thinks what Bibi Netanyahu is doing is selfish. So I think it's important to separate what is fair critique and an understandable emotion that people are having, seeing so many dead Palestinian children on their screens every day on X and on Instagram. And I know, Piers, you are also being tagged in these photos of mothers mourning and screaming. It's wrong.
No, I agree. Jonathan, specifically for you, is a breaking story that the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, has declared the start of a new phase, his words, of war, as the IDF turns attention to the northern front with Lebanon. Now, that's a massive escalation in what is already a deeply turbulent situation. Can Israel conduct wars on all these different fronts?
Yeah, I will, of course, answer that. And I'll reflect on what you said before, Candace. I appreciate your words, and I think that I agree with you on protecting human life, dignity of human beings. I think we're in total agreement. And if you used your platform for good humane purposes, I commend it, and that's great. And full stop, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Regarding the current situation in Lebanon, just before coming on, I saw that tweet, and I think what Defense Minister Gallant is doing is messaging to the US and to Tehran and to Beirut that Israel is getting closer, and that the level of frustration within Israel with the current unsustainable situation of more than 70,000 Israeli civilians that have been pushed out of their homes, and tens of Israeli communities in northern Israel that are now ghost towns because Hezbollah has been attacking them directly, and these areas are unsafe to live in. And for 11 months, and I'm sure that many people don't know it because it's not really reported a lot in international media, but Israeli civilians have been targeted by Hamas for about a year, and people are saying enough. For how long are we going to have to live in temporary housing in other places of Israel? And when will the Israeli government make sure that it is safe to live in sovereign Israel? And I think that's a very basic, very legitimate claim of a civilian population that says, enough, we want to go back to our homes. We haven't done anything to deserve this. And I think that there's been a long process of building this up. And to answer the question, yes, Israel can. It'll be tough. It will be, I think, very, very difficult, and it will be a horrible war. If Israel and Hezbollah go all out against each other, Hezbollah is a very powerful Iranian proxy with tens of thousands of rockets, with the ability and intention to hit and kill thousands of Israeli civilians. And of course, Israel will not be taking that sitting down, and Israel will retaliate. And I'm not going to be surprised to see you and perhaps other people first condemning Israel for defending itself, and then maybe thinking why Israel is doing it. What is happening is that Hezbollah has fired more than 5,000 rockets at Israel in the past months alone. They have gone a bit unnoticed by international media, and perhaps Israel now is saying enough is enough and we're going to defend ourselves. And if Hezbollah didn't get the message the first time with the beepers, maybe they'll be getting it today with the walkie-talkies. And if they don't get those two messages and understand that they have transgressed and are aggressing against Israeli civilians too much, then maybe perhaps more needs to happen. I, as an Israeli, hope that we won't need to go to that situation, because I know that it will be bad. There will be bloodshed. It will be carnage in Israel and in Lebanon. It is still avoidable, and those who need to stop firing are Hezbollah, who have been firing at Israel for the last 11 months without anybody really condemning it or doing anything about it.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Cenk, I'll give you the final word on this part of the debate, and then I'm going to say goodbye to you and Jonathan. And Candace, you're going to stay on just for a little bit of a chat after, just me and you. So just, Cenk, your response to what Jonathan just said there. Clearly, this is a massive escalation already. Nobody's quite sure how Hezbollah is going to respond. But as Jonathan said, they are equipped to, if they go all out, to have a proper massive major war with Israel, which would have enormous repercussions for the whole region. What is your thought about that prospect?
Yeah, so first of all, there is a correct path here. Take the ceasefire, stop the occupation, 2 states, and let both Israel and the Palestinians live in peace and freedom.
None of this is related to Hezbollah. Sorry to interrupt, but none of this is related to Hezbollah.
It's 100% related to Hezbollah.
No, it isn't. Hezbollah, this Iranian proxy, has nothing to do with Palestinians. Hezbollah has nothing to do with Palestinians. They are Lebanese. They are Shiite Lebanese. They have nothing to do with Palestinians. They have nothing to do with Palestinians. There's not a single Palestinian in Hezbollah. So for you to tie it to Hamas is ridiculous.
No, you're
it is whitewashing.
Ridiculous.
It's the old, tired propaganda against Israel. You have to be honest and address the situation. Hezbollah has nothing to do with Palestinians.
Hezbollah is doing it because of the occupation. Are you so stupid you don't understand that?
None of Hezbollah's business. Nothing to do with Hezbollah.
All the Muslims. Watch us.
Who appointed Hezbollah other than their Iranian masters to have anything to say about Israel and Palestinians? What have Lebanese militias got to do with it?
You don't want peace. I know. You want to occupy and steal their land as long as humanly possible. I got it.
Hezbollah doesn't have a say. It's not their business. It's Israel and Palestinians. If you were to say, take a ceasefire with Hamas, I would say that's a valid topic to discuss. What does Hezbollah have to do with Palestinians? Absolutely nothing. The only thing that they have in common is that they are funded by Iran.
You think Hezbollah is attacking Israel out of thin blue air? Do you actually genuinely believe that Hezbollah is attacking Israel for no reason at all, just because they don't like Jews? No, they're attacking you because of the occupation. Are you so incredibly ignorant that you don't understand that simple concept?
The only ignorant person here is you, my esteemed colleague to the panel, to be parroting Iranian talking points and
blah, 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 blah. I know. Everything is terrorist. Anyone who's opposed to Israel is terrorist.
And you can't even make a coherent claim.
Israel can murder anyone they like, but they're not terrorists.
When it comes to what has Hezbollah got to do with Palestinians? Nothing, except that they have the same benefactor, Iran, that is providing them weapons. Nothing else. No logical connection, no religious connection, no territorial connection, nothing. Only empty talking points from people like you and from Iranian parrots. That's it.
Yeah. I know. Poor victim Israel. Oh, they just have been humiliated and oppressed and occupied for 57 long years. 5.5 million Muslims, and they're outraged to find out that other Muslims might not love that idea. So Piers, this is the most important part of this. Right now, the reason I brought up the ceasefire is you could take the ceasefire, and I guarantee you that Hezbollah stops the rocket attacks. That's because that's what they've said, our experts say, every single expert in the world says. But instead of taking the ceasefire, what Netanyahu has decided is in order to protect his own political career, and he's deeply unpopular in Israel and faces corruption charges, but if he signs the ceasefire, the right-wing radicals in his government will leave the government, and Netanyahu will go to election and lose. So he's worried about his own political career. So he has decided to go to war instead. Instead of signing a peace deal, he bombed Hezbollah. Now, you could say, hey, I like that he bombed Hezbollah. You could say that Hezbollah is dirty terrorists, and you could say that everyone who ever opposed Israel is terrorists, and you could say all the things that you want to say. But the bottom line is Israel is starting a much larger regional war, and
Israel is starting on the 7th of October.
I guarantee you that Jonathan is going to come on here. You're not going to talk over me. I guarantee you Jonathan comes on here and says, America must pay for it. America must die for Israel. That's what he's going to say.
You can scream until tomorrow. You don't impress me even a millimeter. Hezbollah attacked Israel.
Okay, then we can both talk at the same time. Okay, let's talk at the same time.
We did not attack Hezbollah.
America,
on the 8th of
wants
October,
you to attack
we
the
were
whole
quiet
Middle
in our
East.
homes, and
He wants you to attack all Muslims.
That is the only thing that happens. And by the way, have you ever heard of the Radwan force? Do you know what they're designed to do? They're designed to invade into Israel and do exactly what Hamas did on October the 7th. That is the main reason why Israel cannot live with Hezbollah deployed on the border.
Gentlemen, I've got to leave it there.
You are starting a war.
Well, I think a war has been being waged actually for quite some time. And we'll see how this now plays out. But clearly,
Piers,
it has been. I think if you are a terror group who persistently fires rockets at a country, you are at war with them, right? I mean, you may not think you are, but you are.
I don't want to fight it. I don't want America to fight it, and I don't want America to pay for it. Jonathan, do you agree? You said, hey, if you're not Palestinian or Israeli, Hezbollah should have nothing to do with it. Iran, no other country should have anything to do with it. Great, then you're on your own. Don't ask for another dollar. Give us the $26 billion back. Why are you using our money to start giant wars in the Middle East? We already had one in Iraq. We hated it, don't want it, and you're demanding that we pay for Israel's war in the Middle East.
Not at all. And if you only knew, if you only had an idea of how much Israel does great for U.S. foreign policy and how much Israel serves American interest in the region, you wouldn't say what you've been saying if you really cared about America.
Okay, I've got to leave it there.
Israel does nothing for America other than take our money.
Only defend it, yes.
You both made your points very forcefully, and I appreciate you both being on
Holy crap, did me and Cenk just agree on something? That the United States needs to stop funding the war over there? Well, okay. This is one of those times where you have to understand and take what Cenk is saying with a grain of salt. The reason why, in my opinion at least, the reason why he wants the United States to quit funding Israel is because he wants Israel to lose that war. That's my opinion, right? And so my reasoning is different than his in that I want complete peace over there. I don't care who wins. Well, yes, I do, because to be honest, terrorism needs to be wiped out. But other than that, I don't like innocent people being killed on either side. I'm okay with my tax dollars defending Israel as part of our agreement as allies. But when Israel goes on the offense, I believe that my tax dollars should have nothing to do with that. And I disagree with Jonathan there when he says that Israel does a lot for U.S. in foreign relations and whatever. You know, I'd like to see some examples, because I feel like the United States is the world's piggy bank, and I haven't seen a dime come from Israel to the United States to help contribute to building our southern borders, to shoring up our military and our defenses. Things that I'm okay with supporting them, they should be okay with in regards to supporting us on our own homeland. And I just don't see it coming back. I don't see it being reciprocated. And so with that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up there. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you thought this video added some value and it's worth sharing, I would really appreciate it if you did that. And as always, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I really appreciate that, and I do try to read every single comment, especially when the video is only a day or two old. When they start getting a little older, it's hard for me to keep track on everything, but when a video is pretty recent, within the first couple of days, you're more than likely to get a heart from me if you make a comment. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching until the end, and I'll see you guys in the next video.